warm welcome. I want to make a particular bow of thanks to the program director, Maria Recius, who, as many of you know, worked right up until the day that she went on maternity leave. And the program assistant to Maria Destiny Clement, who's now covering everything, also deserves a thanks. It's a great pleasure to note that Maria on November 13th had Eleanor Jean Recius, and we hope that baby and mother are still doing wonderfully fine. But we could not have made the transfer to the virtual world that we're now in without the help of both of them. This has been for us another busy year, and the outgoing members of our board, Kate Conavan, Charles Ford, and Bob Gallucci, and thank them very much for their service, their contributions, their, I know, continued interest in the Academy, and their support. We mark now those members that we lost over the year, and we have indeed lost some good friends and supporters and old acquaintances over the year. Frank Anderson, Bill Bodie Jr., Lauren Craner, Jim Leonard, Ed Perkins, Felix Rohatyn, and Brent Scowcroft. And I will have now a moment of silence, as we always do, as the most that we can do to honor the memory of those we have lost. Thank you all very much. And let me turn now to our election, which was a good election indeed. And our thanks go out to the 206 members of the organization who voted. It's a record turnout of 63%, something that may well rival and beat national figures when we get them in finally. Congratulations to an excellent and diverse class of 31 new members. You have been given in a communication from the Academy that list, and I will not read them over, but we welcome all of them most warmly. And never has the Academy, in our view, been more needed, and never has it been more recognized in the turbulent times through which we are going, and the anticipation that we as the Academy in our work and thinking and advising about the Foreign Service, the State Department, the Civil Service, and the numerous challenges we face has become even more important. I want to take a moment to recognize just a few of the special guests in attendance. You're all special, and every one of you deserves to be recognized. We're delighted that Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, David Hale, is with us. David would have been our co-host at the State Department on the 7th floor had we been able to do that this year. And he has graciously agreed to speak to us, and I'll have the opportunity to introduce David in a few minutes. I welcome the awardee for the Annenberg Excellence in Diplomacy Award, President Jimmy Carter, someone that we have all known, admired, and thought about over the years. His health problems preclude him from addressing us directly, and his remarks on this occasion will be given to us by Paige Alexander, the CEO of the Carter Center. And Paige, we warmly welcome you here, and it's a delight to have you. And I know you've just passed on to some of us informally President Carter's greetings, but please take back with you to him the greetings of the 100 and so members who have joined and the 300 plus members of our organization. The Director General of the Foreign Service, Ambassador Cal Perez, is with her. The PDAS of GTM, Ambassador Ken Merton. In case you don't recognize those new initials, they relate to the personnel world, and thank you, Ken. The Director of FSI, Ambassador Dan Smith. Dan, it is always an honor and pleasure to have you with us. And his Deputy Director at FSI, Ambassador Julieta Noyes. Julieta, welcome to you, and thank you for the work that you both do that we so much admire and support. And the deans of FSI, Ambassador Raina Bitter and Joan Polishek, are with us too. And thank you both for coming. We now face a major testing in our country and to that extent in our organization. Transitions are never easy. The Foreign Service and the Civil Service will have to and will move from loyally discharging the orders of one administration to those of another in full compliance with their oath of office to support and defend the Constitution. That's the oath we have all taken, some of us numerous times, and which has in many ways been a guidepost in times of turmoil, and never more than earlier this year when a number of people who are among our most prominent were called upon to do with more than a minimum amount of courage the duty of testifying before Congress in an impeachment proceeding. The Academy has achieved real status as a defender of strong professional State Department. We've experienced our outreach to tell Americans what diplomacy does and why it's an important and under Ron's significant and exemplary leadership. We have expanded that outreach. We expect to be part of the conversation over the future of American diplomacy, whether it relates to personnel issues, to diversity, a singularly important and significant activity that we all have to be conscious of and aware of the need for the change that's now underway and hopefully will be taking place in the future, to how and in what way the laws that govern the service are in need of change and can be changed, repaired, and improved. Ron will report more to you on what we have been doing, but we are in a critical time in which we have realized now for a number of years we must either continue to grow in our outreach and service and further our mission, or we must contract to preserve our slender funding. I believe, and everyone in the organization's leadership has joined in this, not just in a philosophical and rhetorical way, but in a concrete way, we need to expand. That's why we set the goal 2 years ago of trying to raise $3 million in 3 years. With the work of co-chairs David Welch and Linda Thomas Greenfield, to whom we express again our admiration and thanks for their service. They have been heading the development committee we've established to do this, and we've made a very strong start, raising nearly $1 million from our own internal small ranks. Our members have also joined together in an additional effort to put together a challenge grant of $150,000 to work on the next phase. Diplomacy is central to the lives that we have lived and continue to live. I ask that you respond generously when we come to you, and I will let Ron talk to you more about that a bit later. In line with the Academy's broader mission today, the event is dedicated to the recognition of a group of individuals in our annual awards effort who have made important contributions to the field of American diplomacy, whether it's in the realm of policy, philanthropy, journalism, or writing. Each of you has been an important cog in a significant wheel that turns much of the wheels and levers of the United States as it reaches out to the world. And you will hear more about this exemplary group very shortly. It's now my opportunity to turn to David Hale and his remarks. David took the oath of office of the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs on the 30th of August of 2018. He was previously ambassador in Pakistan to Lebanon, special envoy for Middle East peace, deputy special envoy, and ambassador to Jordan. In Washington, David has held a number of senior positions, including executive assistant to Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. David joined the Foreign Service in 1984. He holds the rank of career ambassador. He's the recipient of multiple department awards, including the Distinguished Service Award. David, we're delighted to have you with us. And if I may now turn the floor over to you for the remarks that we anticipate with great interest and are looking forward to having you deliver. So please take it away, David.
Am I unmuted? Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Tom, for the introduction. And thank you, Ron, for the opportunity to join you. It's a shame that COVID has kept us from the traditional gathering at the Ben Franklin Room, but the room will still be here next year, and hopefully COVID will not be. Let me start by thanking the American Academy of Diplomacy and its members for your sustained support during this difficult year. The Academy has been a tremendous advocate for the department's mission and employees for nearly 4 decades. It's a credit to your leadership that the pandemic has not diminished your determination to support and strengthen American diplomacy. And through your various programs, including the virtual speaker series and your American Diplomat podcast, you enhance public appreciation for America's diplomats and the work we do to advance the national interest. The Secretary, the Deputy Secretary, all of us on the 7th floor are very proud of the department's talented workforce. They've performed admirably during the pandemic. Many worked long hours to repatriate thousands of Americans who were stranded without access to flights or reliable medical care. Others worked tirelessly to rebuild critical supply chains. And many others are helping our policymakers stay ahead of the curve by reporting on the health, economic, and political dimensions and consequences of the pandemic across the globe. That's to say nothing of those who continue the regular work we've been engaged in since before the pandemic. As much as we wish it were so, COVID has not diminished our strategic competition with China, our need to stop Iran's malign behavior, or our quest to establish a more constructive relationship with Russia, to name just a few of our challenges. And all the while, our diplomats have had to cope with the effects of the virus on their own lives and on their families' lives. Some are living in countries that have imposed strict lockdowns for weeks and months. Others have had to make difficult choices to continue working abroad, while their families have returned to America for medical or educational reasons. And yes, some of our colleagues have died. We're grateful for the Academy's work to support us. Your many outreach programs enhance the department's ability to explain to Americans why diplomacy matters and how it contributes to their safety and prosperity. Without public support, there cannot be an effective Department of State, so we greatly appreciate your engagement. The department's effectiveness also hinges on its ability to recruit and retain talented people. In this regard, your panel discussions with university students across the country, even if in a virtual format, continue to benefit our institution. And the department especially welcomes your efforts to engage students from underrepresented communities. Diversity in personnel and ideas is critical to sound policy development and reflects our values to the world. By engaging students beyond the Potomac, you're helping us build a diplomatic service that looks more like America. And just last night, the Senate confirmed 6 career nominees for ambassadorships, 50% of them women. And finally, please accept my best wishes for the holiday season. I hope we can reconvene this distinguished gathering in person next year and toast to our good health. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Thank you, David. I'm glad you could be with us virtually, even though we couldn't do it in person. I want to add my welcome to the new members. It's a great organization, even if a small one. And I want to thank first Maria Rosales for our really distinguished program director, and Destiny Clement, but also to Jose Vega from Undersecretary Hale's office, and our current interns, Cindy Taub and Colby Harriman, who have had to do a virtual internship, but have been enormously helpful. I too hope next year that we will be back in the Ben Franklin Room at the State Department. And when we do, I look forward to inviting this year's award winners to join us, along with those who will be selected next year, so that you can have the full experience. This has been a very busy year for the Academy. Our ambassadorial pre-crisis simulation training was transferred to FSI. Since then, it has been successfully piloted in the ambassadorial seminar, and it has had great reviews as being extremely valuable training. I want to thank the Una Chapman Cox Foundation, the Dillon Foundation, Replogle Foundation, Garda World Federal Services, and the Cisco Family Fund for their financial support and the many Academy members who contributed an enormous amount of time to this project. Our newest project on modifying the law on accountability review boards is moving forward. Thanks to Project Director Greg Starr and the very active advisory committee, we now have a draft report with recommendations and legislative language for a new ARB statute that will shortly go to the Academy Board for approval. We have held at least 20 congressional consultations and are aiming to move on new ARB legislation soon. The Academy has also been very active on the Hill. On the issue of commercial diplomacy, AAD has been engaged with the Congress, State, and Commerce regarding the implementation of the Championing American Business Through Diplomacy Act of 2019, which passed at the end of last year with direct input from the Academy. The GAO has twice asked to consult with us on the implementation of this legislation. The Academy has also been providing input and advice regarding draft bills on the Foreign Commercial Service and on political ambassadorships. However, we have not taken positions on either legislation. The Academy's two podcasts, The General and the Ambassador and American Diplomat, have continued to produce interesting and engaging episodes, and we have now collectively reached more than 300,000 downloads. Unfortunately, they've also reached the end of their current funding. We have been working hard to find new sources to ensure their continued existence, and I'm quite optimistic that we will be able to continue both for some time. Despite the pandemic, we continued holding many of our outreach events virtually, speaking about important issues and the importance of diplomacy in our recurring programs. Our Ambassadors Forum at Texas Tech was early enough in the year that it actually took place in person. Others have been virtual, University of Nebraska at Omaha and Lincoln, the Cisco Forum that we held at UNC Chapel Hill, our effort at the Jefferson Foundation at Monticello, effort particularly to talk to students about the Foreign Service at the Rice University's Baker Institute, similar program at American University, and we will have one very shortly at the University of Michigan, their Ambassadors Forum. We continue our high school level outreach program at Hotchkiss, and I thank Tom Countryman, who spoke there in person at the beginning of the year, and to Maureen Quinn, who will be doing a virtual program there in December. We're looking for additional ways to speak to the public about the nature of diplomacy, which many prize, but few understand. New ideas are welcome, especially if you'd like to work on them. We have funding from the Una Chapman Cox Foundation for a project on how the U.S. might better organize to manage multilateral diplomacy in a world where this is increasingly important. Jo Ellen Powell will direct the program, and if any of you are interested in contributing your experience, please let Jo Ellen or me know. Now, all of this, of course, takes money. We are grateful for the support of the Friends of the Academy who have been with us for a number of years, the Una Chapman Cox Foundation, Dillon, Carter World Federal Services, Johnson Hanson Foundation, the Cisco Family Fund. I want to echo Tom Pickering's request that you help us in the capital campaign. We have passed 1 million from our members, but we're well shy of our 3 million goal for the end of next year. Some of our members, as Tom mentioned, have put together a $150,000 challenge grant to match other giving. Finally, if you have corporate or financial foundational contacts who you could introduce me to, I would be grateful. I know that fundraising isn't fun, so I'll be glad to make the pitch if some of you can open the door. I would now like to pass back to Ambassador Pickering to introduce the Annenberg Award and President Carter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, very much, and thank you for that, I think, impressive and valuable report on what we're doing, and as well, you're tying it into the need, the ask that we make as we proceed with the $3 million challenge. It's my special pleasure to make just a few introductory remarks to President Jimmy Carter, someone who all know well by reputation and many by service in his administration and otherwise. And I will then introduce Paige, who will deliver his remarks. The 31st President of the United States was born in 1924, and as Paige noted, is 96. That happens to be a record in age for previous presidents and a record between inauguration and age for all presidents of the United States. He's a graduate of the Naval Academy, made service in the American Navy as a nuclear sailor. It was an important and significant knowledge learning experience for him. Over the period of his service as president, he had a number of accomplishments and challenges in foreign affairs, and I'll briefly mention those. Camp David and the Egyptian-Israeli peace agreement, the Panama Canal Treaty, and the return of the Canal Zone. SALT III negotiations with the Soviet Union, the Iran hostage crisis, the USSR invasion of Afghanistan, opening the door for contacts with the North Koreans, particularly in his post-service as president. That service was also notable for the establishment of the Carter Center, which Paige runs for them, his human rights advocacy, his efforts to deal with diseases overseas, election monitoring, a significant role as an established election monitoring organization, among other things, are very important in President Carter's service. And with that brief background, let me turn to Paige and note very briefly a summation of a very long and very impressive biography. Paige, you'll forgive me for not reading every paragraph. Paige joined the Carter Center as Chief Executive Officer in June 2020. She has had a distinguished global development career with over 2 decades of experience spanning both the government and nonprofit sectors. And she's held senior leadership positions at USAID, where many of us have had the pleasure of working with her, and has a deep and extensive background in work in many aspects of civil society. And Paige, it's a delight to see you, and a privilege and an honor and pleasure to have you here. And we look forward to hearing President Carter's thoughts, and our deep thanks to him and to you and to Bob Hunter for his important work in making sure that we were able to present this particularly important highest honor of the organization this year to President Jimmy Carter.
Thank you, Ambassador Pickering. It is really wonderful to be here. I think that President Carter has not quite entered the stage of being able to do this online, and his voice doesn't carry as well as it has previously. So he wanted me to read his statement, which, as all of you will understand when I say it will be submitted for the record, so you can see his comments, but they're relatively brief. So let me begin. He said, "To my friends at the American Academy of Diplomacy, I regret I could not be with you today, but I've asked my friend Paige Alexander, CEO of the Carter Center, to share my thanks with you. I am honored to receive this year's Walter and Lenoir-Annenberg Award for Excellence in Diplomacy. I accept it not just for myself, but also for my wife, Rosalind, who remains a highly regarded ambassador for caretaking and mental health. And let's not forget my mother, Miss Lillian, who was one of our oldest and I believe the best Peace Corps volunteers. I was fortunate to work with many of you during my time as president. No country can rival the commitment and the effectiveness of the men and women of the U.S. Foreign Service. You continue making contributions at home and abroad following your years of formal public service. I accept this award for all of you at the Academy and for so many other Americans abroad who represent the very best of our country. I am grateful to you and send you all my warm regards and best wishes. Sincerely, Jimmy Carter." And I would just say that he really did want to read these himself, but he wanted to make sure that you all had a copy of this. We had a brief discussion before this meeting, and I was reminded of the fact that he was a president who put the fewest political ambassadors in place and really relied on the career foreign service. I have worked in government, and I'm actually, my predecessor here was Ambassador Marianne Peters, and she really worked on the transition of making President Carter's legacy of the Carter Center something that is going to be the North Star for most future presidents, I should probably say. And we've spoken to other presidents about their foundation and their work and their reliance on foreign service. So thank you for all that you have done and for all that you continue to do to support the people that we know are in the field and need that support. And President Carter is very appreciative of that as well.
Paige, thank you. Thank you very much. We have one business item that we have to do at this awards operation, and that is that our bylaws require ratification of the board's choice of new board members. So to select outgoing members or to replace outgoing members, the board recommends the appointment of the following. And I'm going to ask you to actually vote on this in a minute. The new recommended members are Jeffrey Feldman, Patrick Kennedy, George Moose, Pamela Spradlin, Greg Starr, and Alexander Watson. And I'm going to assume that I could find somebody out there, 100 odd members, who would propose the motion. And you will see on your computer screen that we have now entered the electronic age, and we are asking you to do a collective vote. If any of you just really hate one member on the list, you can email me separately. But otherwise, if you would take your cursor, you have a choice of voting yes, no, or abstain, and we will actually be able to tally a proper vote from all this. And you can go ahead and vote yes for me. And so we'll give it a couple of minutes to let the vote tally come in. While you're voting, I have one additional announcement, and that is that Mark Grossman, who has been our vice chairman for a number of years, actually was in and out of that role. He had it and then he went away to try to make peace in Afghanistan, and then he came back. But Mark has decided that he would like to relinquish the vice chairmanship of the Academy. And in his place, I'm very happy to say that the Academy has selected Alonzo Fulgram, former acting administrator of aid, who will take over in January. Mark will still be in the chair at our next meeting, but I thought this was a good occasion to let you all know about this change in our board leadership. How are we doing on votes?
91, so 10 more seconds.
Y'all are doing pretty well. We got 91 votes so far. Any no's?
No.
I think we're close to having accepted our new members by acclamation in this new electronic age. Okay, we're ending the poll. At this point, I would like to pass to Jenonne Walker and have her do the book awards. And we're very happy that we have our awardees. She's got Paige Alexander up. So Jenonne, I know you've got camera issues someplace. We've got a picture of you that I think we're going to put up, but I'm going to pass the mic to you to present our book awards.
I'm delighted to. Thank you, Ron. We have a joint award for the Dillon Prize this year. Each of these two books that we're honoring is excellent on its own, but together they make a really outstanding portrait of 21st century American diplomacy, literally from the top to the bottom. Paul Richter has the experiences of foreign ambassadors, obviously at the peak of the career. It was, if I may say, the bottom of the hierarchy a very, very junior officer. The common experience of all 5 of these American diplomats is that they were thrust into situations of chaos, confusion, physical danger that required extraordinarily fast thinking and fast acting and a sense of responsibility. Often they were under actual physical threat. And sometimes some of them were working their hearts out to make a success of policies that they in fact had opposed and continued to oppose, but also at the same time worked hard to promote and bring to success with better results sometimes than other times. Sorry. We have 2 certificates. One of them begins saying to Elizabeth Shackelford for the Dissent channel, this excellent book prints a vivid portrait of 21st century American of a junior officer in a situation. The one to Paul Richter begins saying, for the ambassadors, this excellent book paints a vivid portrait of 21st century American diplomacy. They go on to be somewhat exactly the same, so I won't read the citation twice. In a situation of turmoil and even danger that require initiative, innovation, the ability to act independently in response to quickly changing events, and not least, both physical and professional courage. Elizabeth, I think we're going to hand over your certificate first.
Right. Thank
Is
you
that
so
Paul
much.
on the screen?
Oh, this is
You'll pretend I'm handing you a certificate and a $5,000 check. One of the things I like best about your book was your experience at the airport using the top of a car as a makeshift desk to hurriedly manufacture and sign exit papers for America needed to out of the way of the advancing bloodshed. And then this little girl, if you don't mind my calling you that, browbeating Sudanese airport officials who must have been at least twice as old and twice as heavy as you, into letting the departure planes actually leave. It was an extraordinary experience. I'm personally very sorry that you're unhappy with the policy, and especially with your feeling that you're back in Washington. Your detention didn't get appropriate attention, led you to leave the service. But all of us on the committee so much admire your persistence in continuing to advocate what I thought was right, even when it was very unpopular. So thank you, and I hope to see you here.
Thank you so much,
Now
Ambassador
you have
Walker.
a check and a certificate.
Thank you so much.
Now, if you would like, whatever you would like to say.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much for this incredible honor. I'll admit this is kind of a bittersweet occasion to be recognized by a group that is full of so many people I deeply admire and respect, but not getting to be in the room with all of you this year. It would be incredible to get to mix and mingle with all of you. It's been almost 3 years since I resigned from the Foreign Service, and while I don't regret that decision, being in the company of this group is a reminder that I had expected it to be a much longer career for me at the State Department, with many more tours and many more incredible stories. The ability to serve our country and our fellow Americans and to represent our country to the world is an honor like no other, and I do miss it. When I resigned, though, I didn't lose that interest in serving. I didn't lose my desire to help improve our foreign policy and America's role in the world. So that's why I decided to write this book. I wanted to do a couple of things with it. I wanted to share lessons that I'd learned through witnessing things that I saw as mistakes in our foreign policy path and decisions. And I also wanted to share the story of what we do overseas with people outside our field so that they can understand it better. I wanted to reach people who, like me, didn't come from the Washington Beltway background. I grew up in Mississippi. I had only a vague notion of what a diplomat was until I first met one when I was 24. And that sparked an interest in me. Not everybody has that opportunity. So, I thought that if I wrote a book that was accessible to a much broader audience, that I could help share that story too. We know the State Department needs rebuilding, and part of that is, as we've already heard today, building a diplomatic corps that is more representative of America, and its strengths and weaknesses and good parts and bad. And I hope that my book is read by aspiring diplomats, who are studying IR, public policy, but also by people who haven't really picked that path yet, or people who don't know that it's a path they could take. Students at other schools in the heartland who didn't realize that it's a path that they could pursue themselves, or by readers in the American South who understand what our military does, but not what our civilian foreign policy officials do. So reaching people with this message and sharing why I wrote the book, it wasn't an easy thing to do, but this recognition and this award really validates that decision to do so. And it's going to help my story reach more people. And for that, I am exceedingly grateful to the Academy. Thank you so much. I couldn't be more pleased to have this opportunity with you today. Thank you, Ambassador Walker.
And now already we can get him on the screen. Paul, there you are. Your book, as I said, deals with people at the top of the career. You brought about Ryan Crocker in Afghanistan and Iraq, Robert Ford in Syria, and Patterson in Pakistan and Egypt, and Chris Stevens in Libya. All of them were in incredibly difficult situations. And some of them, of course, as I said, were working hard to implement and make a success of policies they had opposed in the finest tradition of American diplomacy. I think I'd much rather let you talk about the book than my continuing to talk. And we also, obviously there's a certificate for you, and another $5,000 check will be in the mail to you.
Thanks, Ambassador Walker. I'm so delighted to be receiving an award that has been given to so many great books, including recently those of Bill Burns and Jim Dobbins. Their books have a special place on my shelf. Many groups have a hand in American foreign relations, including White House political aides, big campaign donors, and the academics who sometimes rotate through government. But during my long stretch covering the State Department, I became fascinated by a different group, the small circle of top career diplomats who were recycled repeatedly as ambassadors to the hottest war zones. They won the trust of the State Department senior management, and their reward was a ticket to ground zero. Ambassadors usually work in stable host nations where Washington's approach is set. These ambassadors were sent to countries in turmoil where Washington's approach hadn't been decided. They often had to help work one out. They helped stand up new governments. They brokered political deals between major blocs, and sometimes they even helped lead US military operations. I wrote about 4 ambassadors many of you know, Ryan Crocker, Ann Pat, Robert Ford, and Chris Stevens. But this special circle of frontline ambassador, of course, includes many others who've been in the Foreign Service. A number of those are with us today. I'm grateful for all the help I got from these ambassadors, their friends and family members, and from dozens of other FSOs. I wanted to write the book in part because I wanted to hear what diplomats like these thought the US should have been doing in the greater Middle East in this confusing period. No one had all the answers, of course, but these ambassadors had insight and perspective. It's been a grim few years for the Foreign Service when its role has been shrinking and many skilled hands have departed. President-elect Biden is promising he's going to rebuild the State Department and re-empower the diplomatic corps. That's going to be a challenge. Its resources have began dwindling long before the Trump era. But I suspect Biden, that in the warrens of the Harry Truman Building and in embassies in remote corners of the world, lots of talented people are just hoping he'll ask them to help him with the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
I'd like to
much.
say, I'd like to say one more thing in closing, that both these books are terrific reads. They're really page turners, wonderfully written. So any of you who are listening who haven't yet read them should do so.
We can certainly agree to that. It's now my pleasure and honor to pass to the chairman of our media committee, Ambassador Robert Hunter, to introduce those awards and the recipients. Robert, you're up.
Thank you very much, Ron, for your continued leadership. And congratulations to Maria and to her daughter, Elizabeth. Welcome to our world, to your world. The late Arthur Ross had a vision. He understood that if American diplomacy was going to be useful, it was also important for it to be intelligible to the American public, and also for diplomats to have a chance to gain the perspective of the men and women who write and comment about foreign policy. And so he established at the Academy of Diplomacy a special award, actually 2 special awards. We divided them because we understood that you couldn't just lump everybody who puts pen to paper or clicks on a mouse in the same category. One of these is for a commentator or editorial writer, or we even said somebody who does editorial cartoons, but we haven't yet come up with one that might be suitable. We have, however, in that category, as well as in the other category I will describe, decided to honor, I think, America's premier writer of opinion pieces in one of our most important publications, and that's Nicholas Kristof. Is Nick on available here? Yeah, that's very good. It's good to see you. Let me read the citation for you and then invite your comments. And of course, I know one's not supposed to say this. I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. And the check is in the mail. The check for the same amount as the others will indeed be soon in the mail, as well as a signed copy of what I'm about to read. Nicholas D. Kristof. Many speak truth to the powerful. Few get them to listen, as does Nicholas Kristof. For 2 decades, premier columnist for the New York Times, he has become America's premier columnist, heeded by everyone serious about our nation and the world. Few even begin to rival the impact of his analysis and insights. Oregon farm boy, he has since worked in more than 160 countries, living on 4 continents. Student at Harvard, Oxford, Cairo, and Taipei, his mastery of language gives added cultural depth to all that he writes. Times correspondent in Los Angeles, Hong Kong, and Tokyo, as well as adept in U.S. presidential politics. He opposed the Iraq War while others championed it. Nick Kristof also writes sensitively on matters affecting individual people, including health, human trafficking, women's rights, and social justice. Author of many books, recently Tightrope, this man of wisdom is our polymath for all seasons. Nick, thank you for being willing to accept this award, and congratulations. Now over to you to say what you'd like to say.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Robert, and thanks to all of you. You know, I was looking at gallery view and Zoom, and you know, there are so many folks on this in this conversation whom I've met over the years in various capitals, whom I've admired, and the Institute itself more broadly is what the Academy itself is one that, whose work is something I profoundly believe in and I think is profoundly undervalued by the country as a whole. I always think back to the point that Bob Gates used to make, that the American military had more people in its marching bands than the State Department had in the Foreign Service. And, I think that reflects the degree to which this country, it doesn't appreciate the power of that diplomatic toolbox and the cost effectiveness of that toolbox. And I hope that we can collectively remind the country of its importance. I've got to say, though, that I'm nervous about some of those long-term trends, and I just wanted to kind of leave you with that thought. I mean, part of it, I think, has been the rise of authoritarianism and populist leaders. That this isn't just President Trump in this country, where you see Boris Johnson, you see in Europe, you see in much of the world somewhat similar trends of kind of a nationalism that I think makes diplomacy harder to generate progress, a suspicion of multilateralism, and also a sense of the world, just of many countries turning inward. And that in turn, I think, creates real problems for the world of journalism. If I think back to the stories I'm proudest of in recent years, it's probably reporting from South Sudan, Yemen, and Central African Republic. And you want to know where my columns have generated the fewest page views? It's the columns from South Sudan, Central African Republic, and Yemen. It so happened that one of my Yemen columns was back to back with it was when Brett Kavanaugh was up. And so I did a Yemen column and a Brett Kavanaugh column back to back. And of course, the Yemen column involved, huge expense for the New York Times, a certain amount of risk, and a lot of time. And meanwhile, essentially no one read it other than my mother. And the Brett Kavanaugh piece, which, I whipped off in a few hours, had not just 20% more page views, not 50% more, not twice as many, but 5 times as many page views. And, I'm at a stage of my career when I can write only for my mother. And I'm going to do things that I deeply believe in. But I do worry that news organizations, and maybe especially some of the cable channels, are now so focused on audience that it's going to be harder to get that international coverage. And we're going to see more of a focus on kind of gotcha journalism, a politicization of diplomacy. We've seen that to some degree with Benghazi, with the JCPOA. And so I'm apprehensive about the way some of these issues are going to be covered in ways that I think will make the hard work of diplomacy even more Sisyphean in the years ahead. And that leaves it incumbent on all of us to try to do what we can to remind people of the power of the diplomatic toolbox. And I'll do my part. Thank you so much for this award and for all you do.
Well, thank you very much for all that you do and for the eloquence of your statement just now. That's what we have come to expect from you, and you delivered as always. The other awardee is in the category of, let's call it reporter, journalist, someone who has to do the day-to-day work of reporting the facts of what's going on in the world. His name is also Nicholas, another Nick. As our distinguished president, Ron Newman, said, we made the choices just in the nick of time. He said it, not me. All right, not me. And that's Nicholas Schifrin, or Nick Schifrin. Let me read the citation. Nick, you on here somewhere?
Yeah, I'm here.
There you are. Good.
Thanks.
Okay. Each weeknight, we look forward to seeing Nick Schifrin on the PBS NewsHour. When fake news is everywhere, when it is difficult to separate the wheat of truth from the chaff of bias and propaganda, he has the critical qualities of reliability and dependability. His reporting spans the globe, wherever is most important, with ABC in New Delhi, including coverage of the worldwide food crisis. Bureau Chief for Afghanistan and Pakistan, then to London, reporting on Europe and North Africa. As Al Jazeera's first foreign correspondent based in Jerusalem, he covered the Middle East with honesty, depth, and insight. His 2014 reporting on Ukraine, then the war in Gaza, was unsurpassed. At the NewsHour, he has taught us about places as far afield as Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, and especially Putin's Russia. Without dogma, bias, or spin, Nick Schifrin sets the standard for trust, today's most precious quality in journalism. Thanks, Nick, for all that you do. The check will be in the mail as well as the certificate. And now, please, over to you for what you have to say.
Ambassador Hunter, thank you so much. Thank you for those kind words. And it's good to see a lot of old friends on the Zoom screen. If you'll indulge me, I'll tell a little story, make a couple points. In the summer of 2014, I spent 5 weeks in Gaza covering the war between Israel and Hamas. And when I left, I went home to Jerusalem and I needed to get my watch fixed. So I walked down the road to a shop owned by Jewish Israelis. They asked me where I was from. They asked me if I was single. They mentioned their daughter. They asked me what I did. And then they asked me if I'd been in Gaza. And I said, yes. They said, tell us the truth. Tell us the real story of what's happening in Gaza. I got through about one sentence before they angrily interrupted. The woman yelled, all you reporters are the same. You're all pro-Hamas. You're all anti-Israel. Why don't you report the truth? What's really happening in Gaza? That the parents of Gaza throw their babies in front of our bombs. That's what she thought. Palestinian mothers threw their children in front of GPS-guided Israeli missiles. 2 weeks before that moment, we're in Gaza and we're interviewing a 9-year-old. He had survived 3 wars already. I asked him what he thought of Israel. He said he had never met an Israeli who was not in a soldier's uniform. He said he hoped they all died and that Israel was wiped off the map. In that moment, it occurred to me that the opposite of war is not peace, it is humanity, it is understanding. That people on the other side of a wall or a border love their children as much as you do. We journalists hope to tell stories to create understanding, to create empathy. We introduce our audience to people who look different and sound strange so that sometimes, maybe sometimes, our viewers understand they have more in common with the character on the TV screen than they have conflict. My diplomat friends in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, when we all lived there, used to be envious that I could travel to Gaza. Envious of the fact that my product is always public. I commiserated with many of them about cables destined for the private consumption of a trash can. But as Robin Wright and I were discussing last night, we journalists are jealous of you, of your ability to affect and create policy. Where we journalists and diplomats converge, I believe, is in finding humanity across far-flung destinations. It is in seeking understanding so that the viewers of our reports or the readers of our cables do not call us fake news or the deep state, but instead comprehend the people about which we write so that they can be better citizens, so that they can make better policy. Dare I say, now our mutual work is more important than ever. To empathize, to understand during this era of outrage, this era of otherness. Thank you to Robin Wright for nominating me, to the Academy, to all of you, and of course, most importantly, to my team, the team that I work with at PBS NewsHour, with whom I absolutely have the privilege to work with every day. Thank you very much.
Well, Nick, thanks to you for accepting the award and for the eloquence of what you said. 2 words jumped out: humanity and empathy. And that has to be the watchword of people in the diplomatic corps as well in the journalistic world, and quite frankly, for all of us in this country as we look at our role in the outside world. Thanks to both of you. And now back to to our president, Ron Newman.
Robert, thank you. Thank you to all of our award winners for joining us virtually. And again, I hope that next year we will be back in the Ben Franklin room, able to wine and lunch you, as well as the award winners, whoever they may turn out to be for next year. This presentation, this award ceremony has been recorded. So if anybody else wants to get at it, or you want it for record, that that can be done. And somehow, without the distraction of food or good company, we've finished in exemplary time, probably a record for the Academy. I want to thank all of you for joining. I want to thank Ambassador Pickering for his leadership on the Academy over these surprisingly many years that I've been here. I want to thank all the members of the board, the Academy members who've given so much of their time without recompense to all of our various projects. Certainly to our award winners for making time. I want to thank particularly Robert Hunter and Jenonne Walker, the head of the two committees that you've seen here. There was, I can tell you, there was a lot of discussion in these committees before they got to awards. They didn't just happen. Also to those others who are chairing Academy committees and giving of their time, thank you to them as well. So I want to thank all of you for joining us in this virtual setting, and for all the support we received from you, and for all the support we hope to receive from you in the future. The Academy could not be making the impact it is without all the support that so many of you give us. Thank you very much for joining us, and I, as Tom Pickering likes to say, I yield you back the rest of your day. Thank you.
I can't do any better than you did, Ron. Thank you all for coming. I suppose one can say with a bit of humor that, well, we spared you another lunch that in one way or another is certainly contributing to your dietary regimen and hoping to help keep you healthy in this difficult, challenging time. And without further ado, I have the honor and pleasure of thanking all the participants, you, Ron, in particular, but all the others, the awardees who I've admired and thought spoke in a way that leaves us with the kind of lessons that this sort of meeting often produces, but are not widely recognized. And finally, to declare the meeting adjourned, and we will look forward to seeing you all again in the future years at this meeting. Thank you again, and good wishes, and hope all of you will stay healthy and wealthy, and you and yours will prosper in these difficult times, and that the sun will shine ahead in ways perhaps after the 20th of January that we've all anticipated and hoped for.